Hello everybody and welcome to our second episode of Live with Sales Leaders, and this morning we're broadcasting from our London offices. My name is Liam Halpin. I lead the LinkedIn Sales Solutions business for Europe, Middle East, Africa and Latin America. Before we kick off today's show, I want to remind everybody that this is an interactive session. We'll be doing Q&A on the On24 console at the end of the broadcast, so feel free to submit questions for my guests during the stream, and we'll try to answer as many of those as we can at the end of the show. We're here in London today to tackle what is probably the single most pressing issue for every sales team worldwide, and at the moment, that is quite simply productivity and time. Sales reps and organizations have never been under as much pressure to get things done in less time. And that means mastering efficiency and productivity across a team is one of the top priorities for any sales leader who's looking to scale their business. Here's a couple of high-level statistics that really do show the importance that sales leaders need to get to grips with this challenge. So in the latest LinkedIn State of Sales survey, the average seller worldwide today only has 40% of their time available for selling. The rest is taken up with sitting in internal meetings, replying to emails, and admin tasks like CRM, and then every salesperson's favorite activity, filling in expenses. Also, a recent RAIN Group survey of sellers and leaders worldwide highlighted where we're seeing this, and only 3 out of 10 companies believe that their sales teams manage their time effectively. The fact is, our salespeople are getting it from 2 sides. Firstly, the office environment has never had as many distractions as we have today. Just think of the myriad of communication channels your average rep has to deal with: email, messaging, WhatsApp, and people's expectation of responsiveness has never been so high. Just an example, have you ever gotten a WhatsApp from somebody who is letting you know that you sent them an email and you didn't get back to them on Teams or Slack 10 seconds later? Happens every day. In addition to that, buyers have much more demanding expectations of sellers who reach out to them, which requires that sellers need to be much better prepared in advance of contacting or meeting their buyers. And increasingly, the challenge for any seller is to become some sort of time lord, able to defend their precious selling time and able to do more in those fewer hours that they have for selling. You take all of that together and you combine it with insights from CSO insights, and that the amount of salespeople in B2B who hit plan has now been declining for several years, quarter on quarter. And the latest report shows that only 55% of sales reps globally in B2B are hitting plan on an annual basis. To discuss this, I've got 3 business leaders with me to help explore the topic: tactics, tools, how do we deal with this, how do we lean into being more productive, how do we use our time better. So let's find out who I've got here with me today.
Lindsay, Senior Director of Product Management, responsible for Sales Navigator.
I'm Lisa. I'm the Director of Growth Strategy for EQ Global, and scaling and creating effective sales is my #1 priority.
Morning, Liam. I'm Becky Schnaufer, and I head up LinkedIn Sales Solutions business for the UK and Ireland, focusing on our enterprise customers.
You're very welcome, and thanks for coming along. So let's kick off with the first question. So as I mentioned previously, it feels like that technology is this sort of double-edged sword for salespeople. On one hand, it's bringing more admin, more distractions, but at the same time, most sales reps, this is from our State of Sales report, what we see is top performing sales reps will consume and use technology to give them competitive advantage when you put it in front of them. And actually, we surveyed a whole bunch of top performers across a myriad of industries. And what we saw is 43% of those top performers said that sales technology is helping them with efficiency, and 34% said that time saving is the most value that they got from it. And they were head and shoulders above any of the other things they said about technology. So as leaders yourselves, which sales technology do you believe has the greatest positive impact on your productivity and the productivity of your teams and your overall organization? Becky, we'll kick off with you on this one.
Okay, so I mean, there's an awful lot out there when it comes to sales tools or productivity tools. I think for me, the thing that I would lean on the most is a tool that brings everything together, and that's my mobile phone. So obviously I have a number of apps that are integrated, that are synced. Sales Navigator syncs with my calendar. My calendar is always up to date. I have CRM on my phone as well. But having everything on that one device allows me to operate in a way that makes me most productive. And that's just, that's what I need. I think for my team, and you know, you probably would say that I would say this, I think that the tool that they use that makes them most productive is Sales Navigator. It's pivotal to what we do. It really is at the heart of our sales processes, and it really does allow the team to bring in and to integrate with a number of different systems, and really allow them and help them to plan what they do, plan their sales campaign, plan their contacts, plan their network, plan their feeds. So that to me is really what drives productivity out through our team.
Mobile phone. Lisa, what about you?
I'm maybe a little bit old school in my approach. You talked about CRM being one of the bugbears sometimes of sales teams, but I think a good CRM integrated with good intelligent systems is a very powerful tool. Part of being effective with sales is to reach out to lots of people and to be able to know who they are, what's relevant to them, what you've said to them before. And my brain can't hold all of that information. I wish it could. So for me, again, it's the integration point that is the key. Technology works well when everything does integrate. So when I've got my information coming in from Sales Navigator, when I've got an alert from the news for somebody that I'm tracking, when it feeds into my CRM, and then the message that I send also connects, that's when I can be at my most productive. So for me, making sure that all of that technology connects is the crucial part of the effective process.
Excellent. And Lindsay, you don't have sales teams, been a senior director of a product, but you are, and your team develops products for salespeople. So how do you think, as you guys are sitting down, about how do we help with productivity at a product design area? What's your point of view on that?
Yeah, so in my role, I have the extreme privilege of traveling all over the world to meet with customers, teams, different industries, different sized companies. We're able to do user research where we actually sit down with individuals and watch them through their day, how they do what they do, how they try to navigate different systems, different processes to be ultimately more productive, more successful. And I think we heard a couple of times here the integration already story, and I think that is so critical when it comes to what technologies are going to make people more successful. It's so personalized to the individual, sometimes the team, sometimes the company. And so I think when I think about developing products, designing products for customer to deliver value, to deliver efficiency, there's no magic bullet. There's no one solution. There's no perfect set of tools. There's no perfect process. I think we have to try to be as flexible as possible. But in the end, I always come back to that integration point. You may have 3 technologies in your stack. You may have 12, 15, even 20 we see at some companies. That's, of course, asking a lot of the individual user to understand and be more efficient and spend more time selling. As you mentioned, that stat earlier is a little bit alarming, how much time users are spending on sort of non-value add tasks, we would call them. And so we really think about, for Sales Navigator, but really across the board, how we can deeply integrate into the other tools users are using to make sure they can be more efficient and ultimately more successful.
Which is interesting because that's why you get so much value from your mobile phone, because all of the apps that are on it, from a email, et cetera, they're all talking to each other.
Yeah,
okay.
That
so,
synchronization, that integration is absolutely key.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing is that if you're going to invest in technology for your sales teams to make them more productive and successful, make sure you invest in technologies that talk to each other.
Definitely.
Okay,
Yeah.
super. So one of the things that we've seen is that I want to ask you about a top tip then outside of from a technology perspective. So what would you say to a salesperson on your team or a manager in terms of coaching your team, how they should think about time management, how they should think about their personal productivity? Lisa, we'll start with you on this one.
So I'm going to give you a slightly curveball answer. I think,
Okay.
and a human answer. The first thing is, you need to have energy. So you need to get good rest in order to be able to manage your time. And you need to understand kind of the ebbs and flows of the day in order to allocate which tasks are going to be most effective at which times for you. So actually it starts with good rest and good planning. That would be my first top tip.
Excellent. Becky?
Kind of following on really from what Lisa said, prioritization. So for me, coming into a working week, I tend to take a look at what I've got to go do, and I build out my prioritization list. And then I take those prioritizations, probably no more than 5 key ones for the week, and I time block. So I look at my calendar and I build in blocks of time when I'm going to focus on those specific things. And at those times, I switch off email. I turn my phone off and I focus. And I think by doing that, by prioritizing and by time blocking for the specifics that you need to do, you really can create a very productive environment that helps you deliver the results that you're after.
And Lizzie, from your perspective, how do you think about prioritization? Because not only are you working on and supporting the products we have today, but you're also working on the future a lot. So how do you balance that time between all the super exciting stuff that's coming soon and the stuff we need to do today?
Yes, it's interesting. It's probably one of the things I've worked on the most more recently. I think we hear a lot back at home in San Francisco. Ruthless prioritization has become sort of the new tagline. So you have to get comfortable with saying no. You have to carve out the time, which is so challenging when you're juggling the demands of engineering teams and sales teams and the stakeholders across the organization. And at the end of the day, my job is to deliver the features and functionality that we've promised to customers. But if you don't carve out that time to think about the 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, we're now stretching that term 5 years from now. What do I want Sales Navigator to be 5 years from now, and how do we think about getting from here to there? It is too easy to be stuck in the short term. In the sales world, that may be the quarter, right? If you are only focused on this quarter, you can easily lose sight of the year, and at the end of the day, you're going to be held accountable for all. And so I think it really does come back to the themes here of ruthless prioritization and really carving out the time and holding yourselves accountable for doing that, and then setting goals on not just a quarterly basis, but an annual basis, whether you're in sales with a quota or not, to keep your eye on the ball.
Okay, so great advice. But as we think about that, the culture of every organization has its culture, its organizational personality, if you like. So we can empower and encourage our reps to work in more adaptive ways, but we can also constrain them with some things. So I wanted to ask you different perspectives on how do you create a productive culture on your team? So you've clearly, all three of you have very strong prioritization, but how do you create that take it from yourself and transplant it onto the organization in the culture you operate in? Lisa, do you want to take us away on that?
I'd love to. So you talked about the personal accountability, but I think something that's quite useful is sharing accountability. Sharing, being accountable to your team, being accountable to others, and supporting others to achieve their goals. So I think being clear about the targets of the phone calls, of the follow-ups, of the proposals, of having a collaborative culture. Equinity prides itself on being collaborative and innovative. So I think having a clear structure of who can support who and sharing those accountabilities can be very powerful.
Becky?
So I think that it starts at the top. Okay, it starts with that clarity of mission and vision, and really distilling that down through the organisation so that everybody knows what's important, everybody knows what they're driving towards and what they are collectively, collaboratively trying to achieve. I mean, that is I think the number one. And then as a leader, as a manager, it's helping your team to remove the obstacles that are stopping them from doing those things that you have all agreed are important to the vision and mission of the team. And that might be encouraging them to say no to things that perhaps aren't vital, aren't important, helping them to look out to the future and not just focus on the here and now. So really empowering your managers and your teams to follow that mission and that vision.
And then Lindsay, obviously, engineers and salespeople are typically very different people.
Yes.
So what do you think the sales teams could learn from the way that engineers operate and vice versa?
Yeah, I think organization, when you're trying to develop and motivate a highly functioning engineering team, organization is the single most critical thing that you can instill early and often. And so we operate in either 1 week or 2 week increments, depending on the team. There's sort of a comfort level, but no more than that. And so you are setting objectives and measuring those objectives every single day, which may be a little bit overkill in a sales organization, but we do something called stand up, where you literally stand in a circle every single morning with your engineering team, and you talk about what you accomplished yesterday, what you're accomplishing today, and any roadblocks. And that actually is the most critical piece on a daily basis, to say, is there something that stopped me yesterday from getting what I was supposed to get done, and is there anything I can do today, me as the leader, is there anything I can do today to help them remove those roadblocks? And so it really is functioning on this very scheduled organization and goal-based short term. And it might sound silly or overkill or like, how can you do that? But it's 15 minutes a day. And oftentimes when you get in emotion, it's not even those 15 minutes. It might just take a few minutes, and you can really remove those obstacles. And it will, at the end of that 2 week time frame, you'll say, we got what we did. We did what we thought we were doing. We are behind. We understand the obstacles, or we don't, and what can we do better in the next 2 weeks? And that's really how you sort of follow through in a monthly, quarterly, annual basis to execute on projects that may be incredibly complex, that you can really break down into those increments. So again, not sure if it translates directly, but I think there's something there that really sort of makes it work, regardless of the size of the team.
So I've seen Becky and Lisa nodding a lot, so I think their teams might be hearing about a new meeting called Stand Up pretty soon. So then, Lindsay, sticking with you for a second then, in terms of, we're clear on that prioritization, productivity, collaboration with teams is important. What are the sort of things that your team are building into Sales Navigator that then supports that in the sales teams that are using it?
Yeah, so the big theme that we've been rallying around for the last really 6 months to a year, I would put into two pieces: workflow and collaboration. So workflow very much goes back to the integration story, right? Like, workflow to me is a seamless end-to-end process. So that you're not disrupted. And if you are bouncing between 3 or 6 or 10 tools, there is no possible way to have a seamless workflow that's maximizing efficiency and productivity. So we kind of already talked on that one. So collaboration is the new one. And perhaps it's not new at all, but I think we are hearing more and more a customer and user need for more efficient ways for teams to work across their structure. Now, this, again, no magic bullet. Companies are different, teams are different. Is this, a sales development rep working with an account executive? Is it a pre-sales working with post-sales? Do you have an overlay structure where there's support people that can come in and help with certain kinds of deals or at certain parts of the customer life cycle? So there's no one size fits all here, but we're certainly hearing a need or a lack of ability for that collaboration to happen in a way that, again, is maximizing efficiency, maximizing productivity. It all goes back to so much of the same theme. So we're really creating a product in which sharing and collaborating on accounts, on leads, on all the entities and things that reps are focused on every day. So those are the components that we've just sort of recently started to release in Sales Navigator. You'll see a lot more coming over the next few quarters that I think will just make that more and more ingrained in what Sales Navigator is to a company and to a team.
Okay. Yeah, and it is interesting actually that because of the fact that buying is now a team sport. Mm-hmm. So we've seen that on average in B2B sales, it's up to 6.8 people or 7 people I've never met a 0.8 person. And so 7, but also recently doing some work with some of our large technology customers, we've come to understand that in the technology sales space, it can be up to 12 to 14. So I think it reflecting the complexity of selling now versus maybe selling 20 years ago is there. Also then, going back into our state of sales report, one of the things we've seen is that everybody's top performers, whether it's LinkedIn or whether it's Equinity or whomever, it's that your top performers will grab whatever you give them that makes their life easier to drive an even higher result. And you mentioned mobile phones, and I'm, unfortunately for me, old enough to remember when we didn't have mobile phones. And I remember getting my first mobile phone, and it was some of the people in the organization were, oh, what do you want that thing for? You're contactable all the time, whereas people who were like, this is great, now I can contact my customers when I'm on the road, they can contact me. So we've seen this propensity for top performers to lean into technology, whatever it is, to drive a better result. But those people are not going to be in the majority of all organizations. If you could fill your organization with stellar top performers, maybe we wouldn't need sales leaders. Just controversial. So in terms of how do you think that, what's your thought about how do you drive a consistency across your organization where it's not just your top performers that are leaning into technology from a productivity and efficiency perspective? Lisa, do you have a point of view on that?
Yeah, well, I noticed on the, we're a big user of LinkedIn Navigator, and the team dynamic of ranking people in terms of their productivity, their use, is really interesting. And we're a business, we're a technology business. We have many different products and many pains and challenges that we overcome. But many of us are talking to the same client about different angles. So that element of collaborating is really important. So being able to collaborate, to work together, to unite, to champion good practice. We've used the opportunity. We have a Friday, rolling meeting where the sales community all join together and share best practice. And so it's the opportunity for somebody to be in the spotlight for great work, but it also creates an opportunity for people to be able to see what is working and to be able to transfer that across. So one element is that community and that sharing of best practice in order to support collaboration. But then another element, on a cold, hard, practical basis is incentives. If you're busy doing one thing and you're used to doing it one way, it's difficult to change mindsets. So to be able to incentivize people with, again, recognition or even remuneration structures, there are different ways we can share best practice and make that part of a new culture.
Okay, recognition high up there, and then sharing out. Becky, what about you?
So obviously a lot of what Lisa said, and we talked earlier about clarity, okay? And I think one of the things that our top performers master very quickly is they capture that mission, that vision, and they have that clarity. They understand why they're doing what they're doing, and they take the tools and the technology to help them go and achieve those goals. So generally they are goal setters. I think the kind of the other 80%, let's say, the clarity is key. But then it's about taking the time to explain the toolings in a programmatic way. These are the things that we use in order to drive these results and kind of define the applicability of the infrastructure, let's say, the technology to the end game. So I guess it's kind of, it's like joining the dots, okay? When we deploy technology across an organization, we do it for a specific reason. We do it because of process flow, because of the end game, the end results, the fact that we believe it's going to make people's lives easier, it's going to improve the experience for our customers, all of those sorts of things. And I think sometimes if you don't have that programmatic approach, if you can't articulate why you are implementing these technologies, how they work together, for the people that maybe haven't quite joined the dots, the reason to use them kind of dissipates. They don't get it, they don't understand, and then you get people dropping off and tooling not being used. So again, it does really come back to that clarity and having a very clear view of what you are doing and why you are driving that digitization within the sales space.
But who delivers that message to the sales team? Is it the sales manager? Is it learning and development, sales effectiveness? Like who's responsible for getting that message to the sales team?
Sure. We talked about collaboration, okay? It's not one person. This is something that comes through every kind of every person that touches the seller. So sales readiness play a big part in this, in educating and getting people to understand how these tools work, how they integrate. Sales managers, sales leaders, telling the story, having the narrative that explains how all of this hangs together. You know, from a C-suite perspective, this needs to be top of mind. You know, this is not something that just kind of happens down in the weeds. This is a change in strategy. This is a change in direction. And it's basically putting sales at the forefront when it comes to shifting the way that we use technology and products to enhance the sales process. So I would say it is across the board. It's sales enablement, it's sales readiness, it's driven by your sales leaders and your sales teams, but it comes from the top. You know, we often talk about sales navigator in the sense of sales people, okay? It shouldn't stop and start there. This needs to be used as a tool from the top down. We talk a lot about leading by example, okay? If you're expecting your sellers to use something that you're not using on a daily basis, they will look at it and go, well, really? I mean, I think it's quite good. But so it's top down. Everybody joins the journey. Everybody has a responsibility.
So somebody at the top has to say, this is important. This
Absolutely.
is why it's important. And this is why we've invested for you. Okay.
Absolutely.
Lisa, is that
Yeah, absolutely. But what I want to add is those stories of success. That's the most powerful way to create change. When you see someone who's used the tools, implemented them, created success, that's the way to influence change.
So salesperson osmosis to osmosis is a really powerful tool.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. The next piece that I wanted to cover then is, you know, the sales process, the sales methodology perspective, and you know, the challenge for teams isn't just that you secure a meeting. It's about, you know, how effective is that meeting? Do you get your value across in that meeting? And you know, wanted to borrow from. We released an ebook. It's on LinkedIn.com. So we did it in conjunction with Miller Hyman. So from a sales methodology perspective, and what we said is like, okay, what does modern selling look like? So how do we enhance the sales process? And one of the challenges that we see is that with this proliferation of influencers and decision makers, many more than there used to be in the past, and what we know from a LinkedIn perspective is that a lot of those people move around. In fact, 1 in 5 decision makers change job either internally or externally every year. So there's a lot more people moving around. How do we help our team then focus on how to find the right people and how to nurture relationships with them? Lisa, share your experience on that.
I'm nodding enthusiastically. So I work in international payments. That's our focus. And I know that there's 1.1 million businesses in the UK who make international payments, so those cross-border payments. That's great, 1.1 million. That's a really good pool to start with. But how do you narrow down into that 1.1 million to find the people for whom our product is relevant? So we also know that there's 11 key verticals. We've appointed a marketing effectiveness business that have helped us to really focus so that we can be productive with the efforts that we make. And what I find is using additional systems like the Navigator tool, there's a number of them, I won't name them all here, but pooling those resources and being able to target the sector and the job titles. So we build use cases, so we know the job titles that tend to have a relevance in relation to the sectors that are specific to us. So then we build out that story, and then we focus, you know, with a structured system on how to get through to all of those people. But it's not just sales, it's also got to be a marketing plan. You've got to have a completely joined up business, and you've also got to have an operations team who are ready to deliver the results when they start coming through. So being able to know your audience, to know your sector, to know who to talk to, what the dynamics are, to have clients speaking on your behalf, again, back to those success stories. That's how we're trying our best to make productive use of the time that we have available and to really distill that 1.1 million to find the people within that group that are we know their pains, their wants, their needs, their expectations, but to be able to be there at the right time for the right person to be able to make the right decision.
Super. So that's one aspect of it,
Yeah.
the finding the right people, understanding who's involved in a buyer's circle.
Yeah.
Then Becky, how do you think about like people, when you turn up to you've identified the person, what should sellers be thinking about and what should leaders be thinking about empowering them? Because we've heard a lot of statistics. In fact, we've seen 78% of buyers don't want to engage a salesperson who doesn't bring custom insights. They're not interested in your vanilla solution.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know what is it that you can do specifically for them. So how should sales leaders think about coaching and empowering their team to deal with that?
Absolutely. So the days of stop me and buy one are long gone, right? This is all about understanding your market, understanding your buyers, being relevant, being of value. And I think from a sales leader's perspective, you need to be coaching your team, you need to be giving your team the space to get out there, to do that research, to follow the right people, to read the right content, and to really build up a very, very rounded view of the market that they are selling into, or indeed, in some cases where sellers maybe have one customer, what their customer is about. I think knowledge is power, absolutely. And understanding how you can make a difference, how you can drive value to your customer is key. And that comes down to this, really, really listening. We talk about active listening a lot, but it is really listening to your client, listening to their industry, listening to their market, following the people that they would follow, or the information feeds that your client would naturally sign up to, and really getting under the skin. And in doing that and understanding, as you said, what are the pain points, what are the challenges those industries or those markets are facing, you can then become a lot more relevant and a trusted advisor. You don't walk through the door with, I've got something you want to buy. You walk through the door with an understanding of what they're trying to achieve, and then you listen and you help them achieve those goals.
Yeah, that resonated a huge amount for me. I think it was last week or the week before. A joint customer we have at Microsoft in the Middle East called Do Telecom, and they just released a case study, and their sales director shared with us that they had a customer that they were focused on the people who were involved in mobile phone technology, but actually through using Sales Navigator, they got to understand a little bit more about that organization's CFO. They found out that the CFO actually had an IT background. And it was that spark of information that, we can have a technical conversation about 5G and various other technologies, and that accelerated their relationship with that customer. So that know your customer and be prepared.
Finding that point of pivot, isn't it? That point of interest, that one key piece of information is so important.
So jumping back into the Miller Hyman LinkedIn ebook that we released, one of the other things was, you find the right person, you now understand a little bit about them as individuals, you understand them about the company, but also then that's interesting, but how do you then help your team understand, is there a valid business reason to be engaging in a conversation at that moment in time? So in your industry, maybe they have a contract with one of your competitors, which is expiring in 2 years, and they're locked into that. So how do you help your team think about not just rotating around opportunities, but rotating around opportunities that are going to make a difference to you and your business in the near term? How do you guys think about that, Lisa?
So there are buyers who they need to create a change today, and the only way you're going to know that is by the volume of activity and being in the right place at the right time. There's no such thing as luck. So you kind of have to play the numbers game, as it were, on the one hand. But as you say, you need to be able to discern which opportunity to then spend the time on. So again, there's a team of advisors around the business who have got experience and who can spot the timings and spot the dynamics. But there's some key questions that need to be asked. So having the key questions, having the key points to look out for, knowing what a qualified deal looks like, and just keeping in the conversation and being relevant, being trusted. All of those dynamics mean that when the time is right, you can be in the right place at the right time for those people.
Okay, and then Lindsay, from a product perspective, we've recently actually changed Sales Navigator, so when you go in, it's alert driven versus where it used to be account driven. Talk why did we do that? Did we do it just because we were bored one day and said, hey, let's do this, right?
We had to change something.
Okay.
No. So, this was a change we didn't make lightly. People hate change. Users hate change to products that they love and that they're used to using. And so anytime we make a more major change like this, we try to do so incredibly thoughtfully. Once we're certain it is the right direction to go in for the long term, because we're going to have to deal with the short term knee-jerk reaction to it's different, I don't like it, put it back the way it was before, which is inevitable. And so I think with this change specifically, we're all pretty used to feeds, right? Feeds have become common, particularly on mobile. I always think mobile first when I think feeds of how we consume information, whether you are a Facebook user or Instagram or Twitter or so many LinkedIn.com, so many of the tools that our eyeballs may be on very consistently. We're so used to sort of consuming this information as I scroll through a feed. But when I think about a salesperson, and when we go back again to efficiency and productivity, feeds are time spent. You are browsing, you are trying to identify the tidbits of information there that may be more valuable, that are worth your click, that are worth your eyeballs spending more time investing in going further. And we really wanted to move away from that, as much as we did have users that did like the old feed. So with alerts, our goal is to be succinct, to be prioritized. What is the most critical information that I can put in front of that user, that salesperson, about the companies, the prospective or existing relationships that they manage today, that is going to spark something that they need to take action on. This isn't about sort of passively browsing, understanding. This is about this requires my immediate attention and action, and the user's ability to customize that or their behaviors over time. We have brilliant engineers that use that to really customize that experience. And it's so moving really away from browsing to this is the critical information you need to know about. That's going to ultimately, you need to take follow-up action on today in order to progress your relationship, your sales cycle,
Okay.
Whatever it may be.
And an example of that I've seen recently is that we've now integrated some external data that will spark a seller to say, hey, your account has just got Series A funding.
That's right.
And $5 million. That's an intent, next best action. Figure out what's going on at your customer. What does this mean? Does this mean more people? Does it mean, are you investing in technology? So it's that sort of stuff.
Exactly. Here's an insight, here's information, something happened you need to know about, and here's what we think you should do next based on that. That's really what the entire alert stream is all about now. And stay tuned for, without saying too much more on the intent front, because we really do believe that's a significant part of our value to add to the users in the next
Go and tell us, it's only us.
quarters.
Come on, we're having a private part. You can't do that to us.
On the edge of our seats now, Lindsay.
So then, Lisa, you hit this earlier on around that. You mentioned that it's not just your sales teams that are in it, but you're thinking more sales and marketing orchestrating together. So Becky, what are you seeing here in the UK with customers? Is it sales and marketing continue to operate in silos, or what are you seeing the best examples of that happening? Is it happening in the UK, and where are the best examples that you can talk about?
Yes, of course. So it is happening, absolutely. The last event we ran was a marketing and sales connect, where we brought both marketeers and sales functions together, and we did that because we truly do believe that the kind of the connective tissue between the two is becoming more and more. I would say today in the UK, what we see when we go out to clients is a real range. There's a plethora of different situations and scenarios across the sales and marketing orgs. I think one that stands up tremendously for me is, and I can talk about this one, is Amex. And the way that the Amex work is very much with the sales and marketing function combined. And they do that by using sort of the LinkedIn suite of products. And I think the key thing, though, is it hasn't happened because of the technology. It's happened because they see that is the optimum way to run an organization, to drive competitive advantage and to get best results. And what they have done is pulled in the technology stack that allows them to do that. So I think if we look at trends, the trend is that they are coming closer and closer together. Interestingly, there does seem to be budgets that are shared for technology tools that now sit across sales and marketing. It's a joint conversation rather than go and speak to that person or go and speak to that person. They're in the buying cycle together when it comes to the technology stack and when it comes to selling in general. So definitely seeing that shift. But as I said, there are people who are up here, best practice, and then there are people who are still on that journey and working out how they bring the two teams together and collaborate more.
And that's interesting because last week I read an article, CNBC in the US, report has now said that CMOs are now spending more on technology than on employees. That's been a shift that's happened over several years. So Lindsay, are we reflecting this in our product roadmaps? Are we recognizing this across our different lines of business?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one that happens to be pretty near and dear to my heart. So I spent the first 3.5 years of my career at LinkedIn building products on the marketing solutions side of the business. So now, many years later, being over on the sales side, I will admit, even from a product and engineering perspective, we certainly are friends with with the folks on the marketing solutions side, but not working together every day. And yesterday morning, we had an event here in London. I was speaking to a gentleman that's a customer. He's on the marketing side, and he was saying when he joined his organization, marketing and sales were like at each other's throats, like not only not working together, but quite like animosity. And he really felt like through a couple of the technology investments that they'd made jointly, that they're really, including Sales Navigator, which was lovely to hear, he really feels like it's bringing them closer together. It's giving them a reason to talk more, to collaborate more, to agree on joint goals, and really it sort of changed the relationship between the organizations. So that was, sort of a company that's moving up that spectrum that you just talked about. And I would say on the product side, very similarly. So we've invested in integrations between the solutions as we really think about looking at marketing. We have this really unique opportunity to see exactly the audiences marketers are going after because we have our own marketing technology stack, and then we can look at exactly who the sales organizations at the same companies are going after, and those audiences sometimes cross over a bit and largely don't. So marketing should always be out casting a net wider than who sales is actively engaging with today. But if there's no overlap between the marketing investment there, that's obviously a challenge and opportunity that we believe we can help customers solve, being sort of having both sides. So we have a couple of solutions in pilot. We have some things already live now where we're starting to notify back to the alerts. We're notifying a sales rep anytime a prospect engages with content on LinkedIn.com from whether that be free or paid content. We'll be expanding that to prospects are on your company page, prospects are even on your website. And so we can really start thinking about those investments marketing is making, the audiences that they are targeting, and how much overlap there is with sales, and how we can bring those closer together. So some things are already happening. I would say we're sort of early in our evolution. Stay tuned again for a lot more there coming soon.
Great. So it sounds like if you're a sales leader and you don't have this proactive relationship or a joint plan with your marketing leader, there's an opportunity there to. It's a miss. Okay.
Yeah,
excellent.
That's crucial.
Okay. So we're going to go to some audience questions. We've had a flood of questions, and one of the questions is about how does this help? How do tools help then with office politics, and actually the one that I encounter a lot is, and as a salesperson I never said this, which is every salesperson or most salespeople will claim they know everybody in their accounts, okay, and nothing happens in their territory that they don't know about, okay. So that then creates some challenges, or I don't want you to move this account from me. So how do we help sales leaders with this, the politics and those firm-rooted beliefs?
I think it goes to accountability. So
Okay.
with systems, I think if there can be an agreed set of rules or dynamics that everyone is working to, because things have to be fair ultimately. So if a salesperson is saying they've talked to everybody, but there's no record of everyone being spoken to, well then there's no evidence that they have been speaking to everybody, and perhaps it's time for change. So I think it's really important that for salespeople to be able to use the tools like the navigators, the CRMs, to be recording their activity, because again, content, it is much better than theory.
Yeah, and I think for better or worse, technology can solve this now. It probably doesn't make the conversation maybe all that much easier if the rep is convinced. But with the integration between Sales Navigator and CRM, we can tell you there's this many people in these roles who are influencers or part of the buying decision that are not in CRM, which makes us believe there's not a relationship there that we believe there should be there. We can kind of highlight that within Sales Navigator. Even a sales manager can then sort of get visibility into these are the accounts where I'm single-threaded from a relationship perspective, or where there's been a new hire at a senior level or a job change that really increases exposure risk. And so you can start bringing those insights to life in a different way than perhaps before to have that conversation about there is more there.
Okay. The fascinating thing about the I know everybody is that, as I travel from Europe, Middle East, Africa, Latin America, one of the things we help sales leaders and businesses with is understanding how well connected their sales teams are to their potential customer base. So we basically say, okay, let's choose senior manager, director, and above. What industries do you sell to? Who's typically involved in a buying circle? And then we run an analysis of how well connected their sales teams are to their universe of buying community. And the highest that I've seen in any of the geographies that I've been in is 14%. And initially the business leaders' reaction to that is, oh my God, like what are my salespeople doing, right? If this is true, well, what are my salespeople doing? But then a lot of organizations haven't moved to a world where they realize there's more decision makers and influencers. So what we find is, you mentioned single-threaded, we find in a lot of CRM records in those accounts, the salespeople are connected to one person or two people. So it's the salespeople it's not that they are doing something wrong. The world has changed. We need to help them with technology and with systems and process. So question on the screen is, this is all brand new to me. I just logged into this. I'm at the beginning of this journey. I'm not doing anything for my sales team other than a mobile phone, a laptop, and CRM. I want to start this journey. What should I do? Lisa, do you want to take that one as one of our customers in terms of because you guys started that journey a couple of years ago?
Yes, we did. And I have to say, I found the system very intuitive to use. I mentioned earlier that we know the verticals that are relevant to us. So for me, I'd start by doing a search looking at a particular vertical, so choose a sector to focus on, and then look at a job title. And then you can start to build pictures, you can build lists, you can have target lists, you can watch particular companies or watch particular people, and all of that will give you content to be able to then be informed to make the decisions. So I think I'd just encourage you to get on the system and actually just play around with it. It's incredibly intuitive and straightforward. And it's really what I've enjoyed about using it is I've used it to get to know some sectors I know nothing about. And by using that tool, I can build that confidence and build that knowledge of the sector very quickly, which again, in terms of this time poor period, is really valuable to me.
And when you were at the beginning of your journey to help this sales leader out, who who did you bring together in your company to say, hey, let's look at this and let's understand the value?
Yeah.
Was it just your sales team, or did you involve operations, marketing?
Well, it started, you said, starting from the top is the key to creating change. So it started, we have a role within the company that is looking at growth overall, across all the sectors of our business. So it started from the senior management team, and it was looking at something that could bring together the sales, the operations, and the marketing. So I couldn't name the number of units we have within our business, but it is something that has filtered through because it started at the top, and also it's been systematized in terms of reporting, in terms of use, in terms of activity. So those two elements of leading from the top and having a system to support have meant that we've been able to use it.
That it was linked to a business objective that
Yes.
you had.
Yeah.
You realized that you needed to integrate it in your process,
Yeah.
and leadership said this is important.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Nice
then-
paraphrasing.
Yeah. Becky, we've got somebody looking for. Okay, I'm looking for a potential buyer in a particular industry. I've identified that person. Do I phone them? Do I email them? Do I in-mail them? Give us some sage advice.
That's a great one, isn't it? I'm going to say in-mail. I think it's about the message that you're gonna sort of push out. So if you're going to send out a stop, we'll go back to the stop me and buy one kind of conversation. You have to think about what you're going to say, the intelligent message. I would always say, when you've identified the person that you want to speak to, have a look in your network. Who else knows that individual? Is there any way that you can get a sort of a warm introduction, something that you've got in common? Liam, you talked about finding that point of interest, and I think that's really important. And I think you let that drive you, really, that connectivity, rather than it must be a phone call or an email or an email. So work out the connection first. Work out the messaging second, and then look at the medium, because that will normally be directed based on how you're connected or the message that you want to deliver.
So your next best action could actually be, don't call that person, call this mutual connection with a former
Absolutely.
colleague,
Yeah.
figure some stuff out, and maybe ask for an introduction.
An introduction.
Okay. And then a couple of questions about how do you make this sales and marketing thing work? And so Lindsay, you've been involved in something that we've called Stereo at LinkedIn, which is how we bring sales and marketing together. So talk to us about some of the results we've seen for customers in that space, because I know there's a particularly large customer we shared at Sales and Marketing Connect that we called Customer X. They were happy for us to share the results, but they weren't happy for us to name them. So do you want to talk us through that?
Absolutely. So, and again, I'll explain this, and it'll seem so obvious in certain ways, but that's, I think, again, we're in a bit of a unique position, having products that sit on two sides of an organization that, again, are hopefully already working together and aligned and communicating and doing all those things, but it's not always the case for good reasons and bad reasons in other ways. So the concept of Stereo is, for users that are using Sales Navigator, one of the most critical things they can do to help us better provide them alerts or information, insights about the companies and the leads and prospects and relationships that matter to them, are they basically save accounts and leads in Sales Navigator. So that gives us that signal, this is important to the user. I now can provide them the information they need, when they need it, where they need it, when something is going on that requires their action. The other thing we can do with those companies and leads is we can actually just send those over so that marketers can put dollars against advertising to those prospects. So sales is basically telling marketing real time, literally real time. These are the people, these are the companies that I care about. This is where I'm investing my time and resources, and so marketing can then use that as obviously an incredibly strong signal of where they can put some of the budgets. Again, they're casting a wider net, as they should, but you would hope that those people would be involved. So it's just an integration behind the scenes that's sitting those audiences over and allowing marketing to tap into that. So we're seeing incredible results from companies all over the world. We've also learned some lessons. It's a brand new product. It's a pilot. And so I think we also learned ways that we can improve. But customers are already starting to see incredible ROI in terms of leads generated and outcomes of those investments on the marketing side. So yes, I don't know if there's any company names we can share just yet, but starting to really see it paid off in spades on the ROI on the investment of the marketing dollars, and both shortening sales cycles as well as larger investments overall for those deals that are in active cycles.
Okay, so we have a question about will this recording be shared? The answer to that is yes. It's currently going out on LinkedIn Live. It's also going to be available on the LinkedIn Sales Solutions YouTube page. So product-specific question. When will LinkedIn Sales Navigator enable real granular reporting level? Similarly, in-mail insights are only generated every quarter. From a manager perspective, this is a roadblock in understanding key metrics. Engagement levels, ROI are more regular. So how are we thinking about improving our reporting?
Yes, I love this question because I have a good answer for it. So there are two things coming and this was not planned, I can see it right there, that this one came in real time. So we have two pretty significant enhancements coming later this year, so just in a couple of months before the end of the calendar year. So this is obviously an existing customer because they're aware of some maybe limitations today on the reporting front. So we will be completely enhancing our usage reporting, adding things like the in-mail stats that you just mentioned to usage reporting, also making the dates and things more flexible. So stay tuned. In our November, we have a quarterly release that we send out information on. So there'll be a lot more information coming in October for the November release of a completely revamped usage reporting. In addition to that, for our customers that qualify, we will be introducing business intelligence integration. So right, there's BI tools out there. This is what they do. It's what they do best, right? They take data, not just from Sales Navigator and CRM, but the other systems you're doing, mash it up and create these incredible insights. We don't need to recreate that. Instead, we're partnering with those as part of our SNAP program. So again, stay tuned for more there, but even above and beyond what you'll get out of Sales Navigator, you'll now be able to use your BI tools in order to take those in-mail stats, match them up with CRM data to understand what parts for your most successful reps, what are the behaviors they're demonstrating in Sales Navigator, how are they leading to more successful outcomes. So a couple of things coming just here in the next 2 or 3 months.
Tableau, Microsoft Power BI.
That's right.
Okay, great.
To start with, and then
we're expanding it out. Okay, so thank you for a great conversation this morning. It's been really insightful. Thank you everybody who tuned in. We've got some amazing questions that we'll try and follow up on. You're also going to get a survey in the On24 pop-up window. We'd really like your feedback on this series. This is the second episode. We had some fantastic feedback from the first episode. We want to continue to make this as powerful and enabling for you, and informative for you as possible. Thank you, and we'll see you again episode 3. Goodbye. Thank you.